Welcome in tonight, everybody. Listen, I am a Big 12 fan. You guys know this is a show emanating from Big 12 country. I cover the league for 10 years full time, and I've been doing it for a couple of years via YouTube since then. I am somebody who is partial to the league and going to defend the league. But I think if you've watched this channel enough, you know that I am not somebody that is going to be over the top homer guy for the Big 12 all the time. I am realistic about where the league stands. I understand that the league is not the SEC. I understand that the league is not the Big 10, but yet I have two examples here today from SEC country and from Big 10 country that I do want to bring your attention to about the perception problem that the Big 12 has, even in spite of the fact that I think some of these things are a little ridiculous. Some of these things are a little bit crazy that have been said and at least deserve defending. At least the Big 12 can defend itself against some of the claims that have been made. One of those clips, if you're a K-State fan, I'm sure you're well aware of by now. It is what was said by Will Howard, who is now the Ohio State quarterback, formerly at Kansas State. The other is a clip from Josh Pate, a guy that I really like. I enjoy his show. I enjoy listening to it. But I will admit, I bristled a bit when I heard this on his show within the past week, and then I saw Big 12 fans tweeting about it, so I wanted to bring it to everybody's attention as well tonight and get into the realities of it, because it centers around the Florida Gators, a team that, to be honest, I scoff at a little bit this year. And the thought that they would just throttle the Big 12, I think, is off base. Now, that's not exactly what Josh Pate said, but I've been getting after it with a couple of Florida fans on Twitter in respect to this, and I wanted to have the conversation here on the show tonight. So how big is this perception problem that the league has right now, and what can actually be done about it? That is going to be a lot of the conversation here tonight on a night when I got to admit, guys, I'm coming to you heartbroken. Okay, I'm coming to you absolutely heartbroken, and I tell you what, if you come after me about this, I will clock you just like I did somebody on Twitter right beforehand who came after me saying, do people still listen to their music? I had tickets this weekend. I was looking forward so much to seeing my favorite band, Blink-182, twice, Friday in Kansas City, Saturday in St. Louis. I had tickets for both shows, and like an hour and a half ago, we got the news that both shows have been canceled because Tom is sick. So I am crushed, I am heartbroken, and I am now going to pay way too much money to fly to Columbus, Ohio on Tuesday to go see them because it's the last show on the North American tour. Like, the timing could not be worse on this. It's right at the end. I got one chance left to see them on this tour. So I'm going to pay a stupid amount of money to go fly to Columbus, Ohio to see them on Tuesday. So it's a little rough around here. All right. I just want you to know I'm playing through pain, but I have a great attitude. This is a 5-star culture here on the show, so we are plowing forward. But keep that in mind, I suppose, as I say, if you want to be a part of the show tonight, I mean, you guys know, you're in the chat right now. Keep the chat coming, and that is all great. But if you want to guarantee that you make it on the show tonight, you can do so by clicking the $ below the chat box, creating a super chat, and you will get on the show guaranteed that way. Great way to support the channel. Everything that I am doing here, could not do it without all of your support, and I sincerely appreciate all of you guys who do. A totally free way to support the channel as well is just to like the video or go subscribe to my newsletter, Open for Business, the Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com. Just dropped today. Those of you that are subscribed, the 1,700 plus of you that are, you got the entire Big 12 anonymous player survey from Big 12 Media Days. So the entire thing, asking them what coach they'd like to play for that's not theirs, who they think is winning the Big 12, a surprising answer there. Would they like to play for Coach Prime? How much are they being tampered with by Big 10 and SEC players? All that stuff covered. ofbnews.com, or click the link in the description of the video to get signed up for that. You can also find me on Venmo. It is John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo if you would like to donate that way. And that is a great way to do it if you're not watching the show live, because if you do that, I will read your question or comment that you drop in with it to kick off the next show. And that's where we start, because my guy JR, who also emailed me, he is an Open for Business subscriber. I appreciate you, JR. Really appreciate your podcasts. This is Maverick Matador. So any of you guys that are on the Texas Tech boards, this is Maverick Matador. He says, wreck him. Great Tech fan. Had a great time conversing back and forth with him, and I really appreciate his support. Thank you, JR. JR is going to help out with that trip to Columbus, man. You know what? Listen, James, you're getting on for some Blink love, okay? James is getting on for some Blink love. I love that you love Blink 182. I'm significantly older than you, 54. Whoo, boy, 54. James, I'm just saying, I feel very old liking Blink these days. I'm happy to have you on board. Doesn't matter your age. Everybody can love Blink. I had a guy coming after me in the mentions saying, does anybody listen to them these days? Like, really, people still listen to them? Yeah, 21 million spins on Spotify per month, and they just played Fenway Park, Petco Park, and Citi Field this summer. So, yeah, people are still listening to them. They're my favorite band ever. You guys know how into college football I am. I'm close to that level into Blink 182. They've been my favorite band since middle school. Anyway, you guys aren't here about that. You don't care about that. That's not what you're here for. Let's talk about a little bit of Big 12 disrespect. Now, Josh Pate, I think, is a guy who is typically, I mean, he's respectful enough to the Big 12. Certainly from a national perspective, he pays them, the league, more respect probably than most. But I do want to talk about this point that he made on his show. And I'm going to actually go in reverse order here and start with the tweet that I saw before we get into what Josh Pate actually said. So the tweet was from RJ Harvey's biggest fan on Twitter. Shout out to UCF Twitter. Said he was quoting Josh, and he said, if Florida were in the Big 12, they'd easily win the conference. Now, that is not what Josh Pate said. I knew it when I saw that. I was like, okay, that's being a little bit unfair to what Josh actually said here. But the point was that they could win the Big 12. And to me, that's too strong of a statement because Florida right now, the current state of their program, they are 2010 to 2022 Texas, which is a 7-5 program. I've done the math on that. That's a 7-5 program, what Texas was there. We talked a lot about that going into this past year. Of course, Texas got out with a win of the conference on their way out the door, which is a bummer because, boy, they sure pulled that off well as far as the narratives go as they enter the SEC, but they had almost a decade and a half full of just wandering through the desert in the Big 12. They were a team filled with talent that consistently underachieved, even though they would go into every single year thinking they were above this conference. They were better than the conference outside of maybe Oklahoma. And that wasn't the case. You had programs like TCU kicking their ass regularly. K-State from the late 2000s to early 2010s doing it on the reg. Everybody was getting after them in the league. So that to me is the comp here. Florida seems very much like a 2010 to 2022 Texas. Okay, let's get to what Josh Pate actually said, because I did, in fairness to him, go actually pull that up. So here is what he actually said about Florida in the Big 12.
You know, Florida could win the Big 12, right? If I just took them and plopped them in the Big 12, they could win the whole thing. And they would be a Power 4 conference champ. Instead, they have to essentially play the Kansas City Chiefs schedule.
They do have a brutal schedule. Anybody that's paying attention knows that Florida's got a pretty brutal schedule this year. Won't deny that it is much more difficult to play in the SEC than it is the Big 12. Okay, I want to set all these ground rules for the conversation before we go further into this, right? I understand. The NFL numbers are crazy. They put a lot more people in the NFL. Florida, recruiting class-wise, they're going to be way ahead of everybody. I was just looking for a point that I'm going to make later on in the show at the Big 12 recruiting classes for 2025. UCF right now, according to the On3 consensus, has the number one class. They're 24th in the country. TCU is right behind them. So you barely have a couple of top 25 recruiting classes right now in the Big 12. I understand the realities of all those situations. I also understand that Texas recruited at a top 15 level virtually every single year between 2010 to 2022 and did not win the conference the entire time. And they were a 7-5 program throughout that time span. So with that groundwork having been laid, when you hear that comment, Josh did not say they would easily win the conference. He said they could win the Big 12 and then kind of dismissively said be a Power 4 conference champion. Now, what he's really doing there, I believe, is getting at he doesn't like the idea of a conference championship guaranteeing your way into the college football playoff, right? Which a lot of national people are going to have that take. If we did that every single year, you would wind up with the same damn thing every single year, which would be a bunch of Big Ten and SEC teams playing. I mean, to me, it's worth it, even if you think it's going to get a lesser team or two into the playoff every single year to give more access to everybody for the greater health of the sport, to at least keep more of the country engaged in this thing and not have a sport that cannibalizes itself down the road because of what we've done to it. But I digress. I think that's a worthy trade-off for the sport here. But the way it is being said by Josh there, he maybe doesn't have to say that Florida would win this thing easily, but it's all done in a fairly dismissive manner where it's like, yeah, look, I mean, we're giving the Big 12 an automatic bid into the college football playoff. I don't know if we really need to. We maybe shouldn't, because college football would be better off if we just took the best Big 10 and SEC schools, and maybe every once in a while a Big 12 school would be in that group. Maybe, but maybe not. It's still said so dismissively with the general idea there that you get the point. And I don't think Josh is like super out of line there as to where a lot of people are throughout the country. I just think it's the reality of where the Big 12 sits perception-wise right now, even if it's not totally fair. And that's kind of the point here, right? Like, I'll go back to what I said at the beginning. I am a realist. I understand where the Big 12 is in relation to everybody else, certainly financially. But I feel like the narrative is a little too out of control with how everybody thinks it would work competitively out on the field, because we've had a very good case study with Texas. We've had an excellent case study with Texas over the lifetime of the Big 12. They barely won by the skin of their teeth more conference championships during their entire time in the conference than K-State and Baylor did. They finally won up K-State and Baylor with the one they got on their way out the door last year. And with all the resource advantage, all the talent advantage, that doesn't necessarily equate to wins. Okay, let's go. Let's look at Florida right now. Where's my Florida year by year here? I swear it would be nice. You know, Josh Pate, boy, he's got it good, man, with a producer. It would be nice to have the producer flash everything up here. Here's the year by year for Florida. Now we're playing selective endpoints a little bit here, but hell, I guess we can go to 2010. We can go to 2010. I mean, look at 2010 through now. And what Florida has been. It is very similar to Texas. Yeah, you've got a couple, hey, we'll jump up and win 11 games. A couple, hey, we'll pop for 10. And yeah, there have been a couple of New Year's Six / BCS, whatever era you were in, bowls there. But there's also a 5, a 6, a 6, an 8, a 4, a 9, a 7, a 4, a 7, and 8. And if we were to go look at the recruiting rankings over these years, I mean, Florida is recruiting at a very high level throughout this entire process. Now, I'm sure there are Florida fans out there that could parse some of this and tell me, well, no, not actually in the Jim McElwain era, or Billy Napier hasn't been doing X, Y, and Z, but generally they're recruiting much better than Big 12 programs probably are. Let's go look at Texas. The Texas year by year. It looks very similar. A little bit less on the high end. A little bit less on the high end. Texas is slightly worse. And I understand they're playing a Big 12 schedule instead of an SEC schedule. But man, Florida is playing an SEC East schedule throughout a lot of this. Okay, that's an SEC East schedule. This was through the heyday of the SEC West. So it is not as bad as it possibly could be. And I know I would have SEC folks coming right after me saying, yes, but I said, are people telling me to scroll down? What do you want to, am I scrolled down enough there? Yes, I understand playing in the SEC, you get beat up more week to week. It's going to take its toll more. People will make that argument. And it is more difficult to do. It is more difficult to do than playing in the Big 12. I recognize that. But there are more similarities here than there are differences, in my opinion, to Texas. Enough that I think it's a fairly solid point to be like, I don't think we could say Florida would just drop down in the Big 12 and have a great chance to win the league. Could they be competitive? Yeah, I suppose. But look, everybody thinks Utah is like back, that Utah is going to be the team that wins this league. And Utah has done a pretty good job against Florida the last couple of years, right? In this series that they have had. I think it would be a stretch to say that Florida would come into this league and win it right now. But yet, a guy who's very measured. I mean, Josh Pate is like as measured as they come on a national scale. And Josh probably respects the Big 12 as much or more than anybody on a national scale. And he still has a bit of a flippant attitude there when saying, well, if you put Florida into the Big 12, they could win it. Florida could win the Big 12 and then dismissively say Power 4 conference champion, as in we don't really need to let in a Big 12 champion here if we're doing the playoff the best way that we possibly could be doing it. Look, all of those things just underscore the perception problem that the Big 12 has. And there's only one way to change this. There is only one way to change this. It's to go beat them. It's to go beat teams like Florida. It is to go beat teams in the SEC and the Big Ten, particularly in the playoff, which I understand that would virtually eliminate Florida. If it's going to be games in the playoff, you're probably not going to be playing the Florida Gators based on what we have seen out of them the last decade and a half. However, you do have a chance to go beat them directly this year. And that is UCF's opportunity. And this goes back to something that I have said for a while here on this channel. And that's like, that game is a really important one for the perception of the league. Not quite as important as West Virginia, Penn State, but there are not many opportunities for the Big 12 this year in the non-con. And like, that can be another conversation too. And someone has asked about that recently. Should the Big 12 be doing more with their non-conference schedules, trying to go play some of the big boys? Perhaps, if you're able to schedule them, if you're going to be able to get that. The SEC may add an extra conference game and make it more difficult to do all of that. But you can't blow these opportunities. You can't squander these opportunities if you really, really, truly do want to make a dent and want to make a difference in this. So the UCF Florida thing, not just because Penn State, the perception of Penn State is higher this year, so it would do more if West Virginia were to win that game. But it's also because it's not really in the non-conference season. It's buried a little bit toward the middle of the schedule this year. I think that takes away some of the attention from it because we'll have a bunch of conference games going on that will have a lot more eyeballs there. But still, this point specifically about Florida, you got a shot at Florida in the swamp, and it's the team that is probably most appropriate to be going there to try and do it in UCF because they are a team that can be a real thorn in the side of the Gators a bit recruiting wise if they want to right now. They're recruiting at a level higher basically than anybody else in the Big 12. So they could theoretically, being their geographic rival, do some damage there. Plus just the natural rivalry that's there. Florida fans have had to hear it for a couple of years now about UCF winning the bowl game a couple of years ago. If you can go win in the swamp, that will help. That will help. Because then the argument becomes, I mean, look, you're telling me you plop Florida in the Big 12, they could just go win the thing. You've lost 2 in a row to UCF. You can't defend your home turf against UCF this year when, again, you're still recruiting at a higher level. You're playing in the SEC. You've got $30 million more a year in TV revenue coming in. Like, what more could we possibly give you? And you're still not doing that. You're having struggles with Utah, who is now in the Big 12. We would have a lot of empirical evidence to point toward it and say, hey, maybe we should chill with this, like, teams 7 through the bottom of the SEC would just win the Big 12 and waltz on in there, like a lot of SEC fans would like to tell you. Penn State, West Virginia, that is a huge game. Early on, there will be more eyeballs on it. West Virginia is a team that feels disrespected, like they should be getting a little bit more love under Neil Brown this year after what they did last year. Go beat Penn State, man. That is a program that has been toward the top enough that probably too much, you'll get a lot of run for beating them. I would tell you that Penn State program is frustratingly overrated because they are the kings of just beating all the crap in the Big Ten, losing to Ohio State and Michigan, and tap dancing their way into a New Year's Six game by going 9-3 or 10-2. That's what they do every single year. They've benefited, to me, more from the bottom, the dregs of the Big Ten, and how much they're dragging at the bottom of that league being so top heavy than virtually anybody. But because of that, they do have a nice, pristine, high number next to their name. They are ranked very highly. And if you go beat them, people will certainly think much better of you and much better of the league. And if you're looking at the league non-con, I don't know, outside of those two, starting to talk about like Oklahoma State beating Arkansas, which, yes, it would serve the league well for them to win that game, but almost more from a, hey, it would just be bad if you lost kind of thing, right? Not so much what you can gain, but what you could lose if you lost the game. So these are opportunities that the league needs to take advantage of, really need to take advantage of those sorts of games. Of course, the college football playoff is what will do it much more so than any of that. And that's another point that I've hit from a couple of different angles so far this year, in that you have a chance to brand build more if you're a Big 12 school or just the league as a whole now than you ever did before. You're further away from an actual national championship because you will have to win more games against the elite competition there, right? Even if you win the league and you get the bye, you're still going to have to win 3 games against really high-level competition to win a national championship as opposed to 2. So it's become more difficult, objectively, to win a title, which is what will give you the ultimate respect. However, you're going to have a team in the playoff every single year now, it would appear, for the foreseeable future. And so you'll have a chance to win games every single year. And the more you can win games, the more you can raise your profile. And it works, I think, maybe more so for specific schools. If one school can win the league more often than not and be getting there consistently, they could really elevate their profile just by winning games in the playoff, because we have a lot of casuals that just watch the playoff. We have a lot of casuals that really just focus in on the playoff and don't love the sport like most of us do for the totality of it. And that's where a lot of the perception issue really comes from. Even SEC and Big Ten fans, like, they pay so much more attention to the playoff because it is more relevant to the schools in their league. They have been playing in it more often, at least the top schools in their league. So in the eyes of those big fan bases and a lot of the casual viewers across the nation, you can brand build better in this era by the fact that you will have somebody there. Do some damage, win some games. I don't think anybody's expecting the Big 12 to win a national championship. I certainly wouldn't. Okay. But could you have a TCU that makes a nice run and beats a Michigan every once in a while? Yes. And if you keep doing that, if you do that a couple of times, this perception can start to slowly change, at least a little bit. But the attitude of Josh Pate, who I'm telling you, I listened to him enough to know that the guy has a healthy amount of respect for the Big 12. Ask Iowa State fans about it. That's still where his attitude is at when trying to just flop Florida, who has been like an 8-4, 7-5 program in the SEC, perennial underachiever over the last 15 years. He thinks you can still basically just plop them in there and, yeah, they could win the league. I would disagree. I think it's a bit unfair to the Big 12, but there's nothing, you can't sit around and whine about it. Nothing's really going to change. You've got to go actually take it to them and do something. And Florida is directly on the schedule there. Now, there's one other example of this that I want to bring to your attention today, and it comes from Big Ten country and Ohio State. I know it's something that a lot of my K-State followers have been paying a lot of attention to. But let's stop for a super chat here. James, my guy James, thank you, James, for the super chat. I'm not seeing a question or comment attached to it, and there it goes. There it shows. But James, very generous of you, very kind of you, donating to the Get John to Columbus and Blink 182 since his shows got canceled fund. James, thank you, sir. Very, very much appreciate it. Anybody else, if you want to be on the show tonight, you want to guarantee that you get on the show tonight, you can submit a super chat by clicking the $ below the chat box in order to do that. We have a lot more people, a lot more eyeballs on the show tonight. You guys will notice that is because it's the first stream that has been on Twitter since I've been doing this. I've seen enough people doing it, and finally people told me, hey, if you do pay for the extra subscription or whatever on Twitter, you can stream on Twitter. So I thought, all right, I'll check it out. And people were saying, I get a lot more people when I do that. Well, boy, you weren't wrong. There's a lot more people here because of Twitter. I would like to encourage anybody that is watching on Twitter, if you do want to be a part of the actual chat that's happening here and be a part of the show, make sure you just hop on over to YouTube. Just John Kurtz on YouTube to find that. And you can do that there. And I would also invite anybody on Twitter, if you haven't subscribed to the Big 12 newsletter, ofbnews.com, open for business, the Big 12 newsletter. You can get that and the latest send on that I will tweet a link out to here very soon is the Big 12 Anonymous Players Survey from Big 12 Media Days. It's players anonymously weighing in on a lot of things, who they think will win the league, what coach they would want to play for outside of their own, what they think of Coach Prime, There's a lot. There's a lot for you to be a part of there. So welcome in everybody who is seeing this for the first time or maybe just the first time in a while. Great to have you back. Thank you for being here. All right. Will Howard, he used to be the quarterback of the Kansas State Wildcats. He won a Big 12 championship in 2022. Now he's in Columbus, Ohio. And speaking of Ohio State and major fan bases here, I am fascinated by what this is going to look like this year for a number of reasons. And I think Big 12 fans probably should, in general, even if you're not just a K-State fan, if you're a Big 12 fan, this is a quarterback that was good enough to win the Big 12. He's now going to pilot the Ohio State offense with a ton of talent and national championship or bust expectations. What is that actually going to look like? And what will the implications be of that depending on how it goes? Will Howard really rubbed some folks in Manhattan and in K-State country the wrong way with these comments. Let me get to Will Howard here. Here we go. All right. So this is Will Howard. He was asked a question about the biggest difference between being at Ohio State and being at K-State.
The one thing I would say is that I don't feel like I have to be a hero here. And I feel like I have the guys around me to where I just need to facilitate and just get them the ball and make good decisions. And at the end of the day, I don't have to go out there and do anything superhuman. You know, I just have to be myself and trust the guys around me. And
all right. Feels like he doesn't have to be a hero now that he is in Columbus. I think there's a lot going on here. There are a lot of K-State fans that took some issue with Will Howard by the end of last season, not just because he was pretty turnover prone last year, but also because he had a tendency, and look, I love Will Howard, and I was not about to go after him publicly like a lot of people were on this. I love the guy. He was always really good to us on the 3 Mile podcast, did a lot of interviews with us. He took a ton of crap early in his K-State career, stuck it out when a lot of kids would transfer, and he came back around and won a Big 12 championship, one of only 3 in school history. So I will always love the guy for that. But he did come across at times a tad whiny, a tad like maybe pushing some of the blame off of his shoulders. It just seemed like he was a guy that didn't always have the thickest skin. And I say that as somebody who does not always have the thickest skin. I say that with a hearty dose of self-awareness. But that did put off some people, I think, especially toward the end of last year when K-State had a somewhat disappointing season with a lot of close losses to very good teams last year. Obviously, Missouri, Texas, Oklahoma State come to mind there. Iowa State too at the end of the year, but I think it was really the 3 games before that were eating at people more because of what it meant for K-State's Big 12 championship aspirations. Those were already out the door by the time that you got to the Iowa State game. So there's already a little bit of animosity from K-State fans. I would point out that Will had a tendency to have sound bites like this that at some points were not taken very well. It's like a little bit of Bruce Weber, I think, in Will Howard and his public comments, where sometimes you're like, I don't think you really meant a ton of harm by that, but you maybe could have said that a little bit differently. Or if I were you, I may have not said it exactly like that. Look, I mean, last year, Will Howard threw 10 interceptions last year. He could have had a lot more. The Kansas game, I was just having a little bit of fun on Twitter earlier today, but I posted the first part of the clip where, I mean, you're down 2 scores in Lawrence, and he throws from about his own 20 a tailor-made pick 6 that was just dropped by a linebacker, flat out dropped, and the game would have been over at that point if it happened. He got lucky there that wasn't even a loss. There was a crucial mistake from Will Howard in the Texas game in overtime where he had a running lane to his right. He goes to the other side. They wind up not scoring. All they had to do was get in the end zone with a touchdown. They win the Texas game. Mizzou, early in the year, he's got a chance to run for a first down. He slides about 5 yards short of the marker. That turns into a game where they don't score enough points to win in a crucial one. He was really bad against Oklahoma State. There's no getting around that. It was a pretty bad performance. And if we want to break down the specifics of did you have to be a hero at K-State, I mean, the 2022 team, it was really a lot of what he talked about there at Ohio State. He didn't really have to be a hero. He was playing with Deuce Vaughn, arguably the best running back in school history. Deuce Vaughn versus Darren Sproles, certainly a fun debate. He's playing with Malik Knowles, who was a very good wide receiver. He's playing with Cade Warner, who was a very good wide receiver. His tight end, Ben Sinnott, was a second-round draft pick of the Washington Commanders. So he had some guys around him. Last year, maybe not quite as much, but I mean, DJ Giddens, pretty good running back. Trayshawn Ward, pretty good running back. Ben Sinnott was still roaming around there, second-round draft pick, tight end. There was a little bit more on his plate last year, and he did struggle. So I will give him a little bit of slack in that regard. Like, he had to do a little bit more last year, and that did cause him to struggle. But the Superman thing was definitely causing some issues in terms of turnover-worthy throws, etc. Outside of just like the K-State fan drama and how we look at that and how we should interpret those comments, which, again, I really am not that offended by. The reality is, again, when we're talking about perception, the perception to anybody that hears that is going to be, that's not from Manhattan or is a K-State fan or a Big 12 fan, is going to just be like, well, yeah. I mean, the guys at Ohio State now, that was K-State. Fine little program, but this is Ohio State. It's a much different deal. And it is. They've got maybe the best roster in the entire country. They're absolutely loaded. So there's definite truth to what he is saying. But right now, nobody is going to stop for even a millisecond to like think about that and dive into the context like a K-State fan would. It's going to be like, yeah, I mean, of course, it's a Big 12 team versus the best team in the Big 10, or one of the best teams in the Big 10. My apologies to Michigan. My apologies. Although, you know, the sign stealing thing, we'll see if those wins hold up, Michigan. I say that tongue in cheek. Nobody's going to stop for a second to really think and contemplate that and get into any of the details or dive deeper, because the perception of the Big 12 is not high enough right now. And even if K-State was the best of the Big 12 2 years ago with Will Howard at quarterback, nobody cares really when they hear those comments. In fact, you know, a lot of the pushback was just about people making fun of Ohio State and, well, can Will Howard actually be good? Is he good enough to even do that? I mean, that's where people go. They're not stopping to try and defend the Big 12 or think about the Big 12's place in any of this. And I'm not saying what the Big 12 needs to do is like fix and change this one specific scenario here. It's just that you would like the league to get to a point where at least it might give somebody in a situation like this a little bit of pause to be like, well, you know, wait, maybe which Big 12 program was that? How good actually were they? Can we do a little bit of cross comparison there? Make them at least stop to think. Right now, there's no stop to think. It's just immediately like, yeah, of course. And the only way to do that is to win games in the playoff. And I would also add, preferably not get 65-7 in the playoff. That would also be very nice, because TCU quite literally is the last team to beat Michigan. And I would understand if you came back and said, hey, John, a little hole I could poke in this whole, hey, just go beat them in the playoff thing, is that TCU literally did that in an era where the playoff was harder to get to, and they beat Michigan, who would then go on to win every single game after that to win a national championship. And yet TCU is still not getting any respect, not even within their own conference. Like, after what they did last year, you know, they're not picked in the top 5 or 6 of the league even. They're not considered a contender. People are talking about 8 teams that have a shot at the Big 12 title, and not a lot of people, unless they're real Josh Hoover truthers, are thinking that TCU is in that group, okay? So the perception problem definitely still exists, even though you did something great. The problem is, you also can't just get beat so badly that it creates just an embarrassing spectacle on national TV when everybody is watching. So that's it. That is a piece of this for the Big 12. Those are 2 things that I just connected in my head and was like, man, as much as I am very happy, and I did a show not long ago where I sat here and said, man, honestly, like, this feels pretty good. This feels pretty good to be sitting here and saying, when we thought 3 years ago, when I really started doing these YouTube shows, man, it's August of 2021. Last month, we learned that Texas and Oklahoma are leaving, and Stuart Mandel is projecting that the league is going to have a TV value of like $9 million per team. And is the league going to stay together? What is going on? Like, when you came from that to where you're now in a conversation with guys like Josh Pate saying, yeah, I actually think Florida State, Clemson, and the Big 12 is a real thing that could happen. And you've already outlasted the Pac-12 and like things feel like, we can exhale a little bit. Life is good. You've got Brett Yormark looking down private equity, all these different things you can do to add extra revenue to the conference. Things feel pretty good. But yet you still have so far to go from a national overall perspective here to catch up with perception in the Big 12. Okay, if you guys want to be a part of the show tonight, click the $ below the chat box. If you are watching on YouTube, that will create a super chat, which pins it in a separate column and ensures that you make the show. And I do have to give a shout out to my guy, Alan. I hope he watched the end of that last show, because I know at the very end there, it snuck one in on me and I missed it from Alan. Alan, I did read it, I promise. And you are one of the best supporters of this channel. I did want to give you a little bit of extra love here today. My apologies. Very rarely happens that I miss something like that, but I missed Cyclone Steve and was able to rectify it later. I also missed Alan there. So it's my sincere apologies, Alan. I hope you are here either now or at some point here on the show tonight. And if you are, you guys try and let me know in the chat. If he is, Alan, you don't need to pay a damn cent. You can say whatever the hell you want to say tonight. And I will atone for that and make up for it. But anybody else that wants to be a part of the show, if you want to guarantee your way on, basically tonight you have two options. You can click the $ to submit a super chat, or you can say something nice about Blink 182. Since if you are just joining, both of my shows in Kansas City and St. Louis on this tour that were supposed to be Friday, Saturday got canceled. So now I'm going to spend way too much money to fly to Columbus to go see him on Tuesday. And to whoever asked, maybe I should hit up Will Howard and see if I can go stop by while I'm in Columbus there. Will Howard did give me one of the great moments, I think, of my internet content creation career. We've still got a screenshot somewhere. It was when he came on 3MA. Was it the summer? Maybe like the winter or spring after winning the Big 12 in 2022. And we were telling him, hey, man, kind of gassing him up. Like, you took a lot of crap from a lot of people. And now here you are sitting as a Big 12 champion. Why don't you go get that ring? Like, you have that ring? And he was like, yeah. And I'm like, hey, show us the ring. And he flashed the ring like up to the camera, like did one of those, but it's just the Big 12 championship ring sitting up there. It was pretty great. So shout out to my guy, Will Howard, for that. I understand why some of K-State Twitter and the K-State fan base not super high on those comments. Whatever, kind of in one ear out the other. I don't think he was meaning anything terrible by it. I'm telling you, Bruce Weber is really the comparison there, where it was like Bruce would say stuff all the time where I'm like, God, I don't like that, even though I don't think you really meant it the way that it kind of came across there. This, I have to admit, is something we're going to talk about that is a little bit silly, because it's a list from bookies.com. And not only that, no offense, bookies.com, but it's a list from bookies.com. And not only is it a list from bookies.com, it's based on an algorithm that was put together by bookies.com. It's an algorithm from bookies.com. Like, what are we doing? But this drove more discussion in Big 12 country this week than anything else I saw. This drove all the discussion. So let's give this a look, man. Bookies. I keep thinking bookies.com. Yeah. That's booking.com, right? Pre-game experience rankings. So more or less, it's like your stadium rankings, which I already did a video on this summer. You can go find that on the channel if you would like. But this is about the pre-game experience at every Big 12 stadium. Bookies.com has compiled a comprehensive list of the top Big 12 pregame destinations. This list is derived from an algorithm that considers multiple factors, including location, tailgating, entertainment around the stadium, and family sentiments. Okay. Here, will this make it a little bit easier for everybody to read? Yeah, a little bit easier for everybody to read there. So with this, if you're looking at the numbers, higher is better. You initially look at it and you're like, wait, 16, that's bad, right? That'd be ranked last. It's reverse. So it's, again, bookies.com. We got to bear with them here a little bit. I would have probably flip-flopped that. We're used to reading the Phil Steele unit rankings, right? That's why this is all throwing us off. We see the Phil Steele unit rankings laid out like this, and we're like, oh, 1, that's good. No, other way around. 16 is the best, 1 is the worst. So you've got location, tailgating, entertainment, family sentiment. I swear to you, I'm not bringing up this list just because K-State was number 1 on here, okay? I put Boone Pickens Stadium above K-State from an environment standpoint. If you go watch that video that we did, K-State gets a 3 for location. Like, fine, I understand. It's 2 hours away from Kansas City. Manhattan's a great college town, but it's not exactly Utah fans who are upset about coming into the league. It's not exactly LA or Eugene or Palo Alto. Okay. Tailgating 14, that is totally fair. It's a great tailgating environment. They've got West Virginia, Oklahoma State, K-State is the best tailgating environments. That is one of the real beefs here. Iowa State only gets 9 there. Iowa State needs to be in the top 3. Iowa State needs to be in the top 3. It's a great tailgating destination. And when the only pushback I got on Twitter for defending that was, well, man, it gets so cold there by the end of the year when you're trying to tailgate. You're making the point because those fans are still out there in full force, man. They don't care. Rain, shine, snow, sleet, hail, whatever. You'll get your mail delivered and you'll get some Busch lattes going down the gullet of a bunch of Iowa State fans outside of Jack Trice. That's the way that it goes. They deserve more respect there. So there frankly are a lot of beefs that I would have with this list. But this, people were lighting up about this, man, like a Christmas tree on Twitter defending their schools. Texas Tech fans are the other ones. Oklahoma State and Texas Tech fans, I think, obviously are very happy here. Texas Tech for location. There were a lot of people that are not Texas Tech fans that were really upset with the Texas Tech location bit of this, right? So Texas Tech gets ranked as the second best locale in the Big 12, right behind Colorado. Also, interestingly, Kansas in Lawrence gets the third best destination. Now, I'm not supposed to say this. I like Lawrence. Lawrence is a pretty fun place. I've had some very good times in Lawrence. And speaking of the music conversation tonight, I really appreciate the music scene in Lawrence. But it is, it's above Fort Worth. It's above BYU out in the mountains. It's above Orlando, Cincinnati, like larger metro areas. I'm not quite sure what the algo is doing to rank these, even if I don't think a lot of these are maybe as crazy as some people do. But that is another thing I would point out. Boulder probably is the number 1 location, dude. Boulder is awesome. I love Boulder. It's a gorgeous setting. Stadium, last time I was there anyway, little bit old, little bit run down, seen better days. Also, the press box, seen better days, at least as of 2010, which I realize now is getting a long ways away the last time that I was there. But the location of where it's at is great. Tailgating, Colorado being that high on tailgating, I was like, boy, again, it was not a great era of Colorado football when I was there, but I don't remember a particularly robust tailgating scene. Maybe that's gotten better now with Coach Prime. I guess that has to be a consideration here. The family sentiment, Colorado not being dead last in family sentiment. That's one thing that gets me. It's my go-to story. I've told it many times here on this channel, but especially since we have so many more people in the audience because of Twitter tonight and starting the Twitter live streaming. The last time I was in Boulder, we took a student vehicle because we were doing student radio, and it had a K-State logo on the side of it, like the university logo, not really an actual Power Cat. It was just like the K-State, more like university sort of seal and logo. And when we came back out after the game and backed up, there had been 4 beer bottles placed under our tires by Colorado, I presume students, I don't know, Colorado fans trying to pop the tires. Didn't work, Buffs. We made it back. Didn't work. But that's what you get in Colorado, man. I think they invented the battery in a snowball trick. Like, Colorado is no place for the weary. There was also that TikTok that went around last year of the USC Colorado game and what was happening to USC fans there walking through. I think Colorado deserves to be dead last in family sentiment. But who am I to argue with the almighty bookies.com algo? By the way, I do feel like I speak with a level of authority on this because every school in the old Big 12, I've been to the stadium at least 2 times during the 10 years that I covered the league. And like I said, I've also been to Colorado a couple of times, although it was back in 2008 and 2010. But I've been to a lot of these places. I will be hitting another one coming up in just over a month when I go to BYU. Plane tickets are booked. I will be there. So I'll get even more expertise there. But man, BYU feels low. They're getting stiffed on the location. Tailgating, I guess, I know that a part of this is people are going to be like, well, they don't drink. So how could the tailgating scene be great? You could still have a fun tailgate without booze. Okay. I would make that claim. Entertainment. I'm sure a lot of this is just BYU getting shafted because people think, well, they don't drink. You're not going to have a bunch of booze there. So that, and then family sentiment. I mean, they're not even number one for family sentiment. Who's getting number one for? K-State's getting number one for family sentiment. Look, I mean, Manhattan's great, but BYU, they literally give you ice cream. They give you ice cream at the game if you're a visiting fan. They're almost overly nice at times. I think BYU would still deserve to be higher there. Iowa State getting worst location. That's just kind of a tough draw because I feel like most people would take Ames, Stillwater, Manhattan, maybe Lubbock, and just at Waco and kind of mix that all up in a bag and just draw them out like the NBA lottery or something. And it would just depend on what day it is as to who would actually get last there. They deserve better tailgating. The entertainment part, I would love to know what's actually going into the entertainment there. I just feel like looking at anything about a stadium experience, when we're talking about like an actual college football experience here, and Iowa State is ranked next to last, like just above Houston, we're doing something wrong. We're doing something wrong with that, okay? Even beyond that, like I've been to Baylor. The sailgating is cool. It's a gorgeous stadium. Like McLean is gorgeous, and it is so much better. I went to Floyd Casey once, night that I'll never forget in 2012. Dreams going to die. Been to Floyd Casey once. McLean Stadium is worlds better, eons better there, and sailgating is cool. But in terms of environments, like if you're wanting a college football environment, I would tell you to go to Ames every time before I would tell you to go to Waco. It's a much nicer stadium in Waco, but the atmosphere and environment for college football is a lot better. Typically on your average Saturday in Ames, Iowa. Like Arizona State, I don't know, man. My perception on Arizona State is not that that's a great environment really to be in. TCU at 7, I guess that's fine. TCU is pretty so-so. Again, beautiful stadium. Amon G. Carter Stadium is great. Not always a great environment. Family sentiment. All right, that is one thing. I did not go to Fort Worth 2 years ago in the 2022 season, but man, a lot of stories about words, beer receptacles, a lot of things being thrown at K-State fans there. It did not seem like a particularly family-friendly environment at TCU, so I might have some qualms with that one as well. I'm happy that West Virginia makes the top 5. I love the location there because it is difficult to get to. I understand. It is difficult to get to, but it's so unique compared to the rest of the league, and it's a pretty beautiful environment with all the hills and scenery that's going around there. I would highly encourage everybody to do that. And yes, the tailgating is great once you are there. Texas Tech, I'll say this too. I know I brought up the location there, and everybody kind of craps on Lubbock. Lubbock is not nearly as bad as people make it out to be. The problem with Lubbock is that it's sort of in the middle of nowhere, and it is very hard to get to. We did that drive every other year during my decade covering the league full time from Manhattan. It's like an 11-hour drive. It's rough. Not a huge fan of it, but once you get there, it's cool. It's got like college town vibes and college town atmosphere, but in a bigger city. I'm not saying it's really like a city, but it's like 3 times the size of like a Manhattan, Ames, Stillwater, and you still get the feel of like everybody there really cares about it, and it is like a college town. So I will stand up for Lubbock. Okay, Tech fans, I want you to know I will stand up for Lubbock in the face of the slander that comes in there. So anyway, those are my thoughts. Let me know in the chat what you guys think as well. I'm very much open to that. But this got people talking, and I know I see. Let's just pull out of that. I know I see. Was it Chuck? Chuck says John's still babbling about stadiums. Lordy can't wait for games. Well, there is some truth to that, Chuck. There is some truth to that. I mean, we are getting to the very end of the offseason here where we're close and we're all really wanting that. But I tell you what, I got to at least try to program this a little bit around what you guys want to talk about. And what the people were wanting to talk about this week is everything that was going on in that thread. People being very, very fired up. I don't know that I have my mentions piece of this pulled up right now to show you like what some people were saying. But I guess we can just go look at what happened to Joseph here. Shout out to Joseph Duarte from the Houston Chronicle there. We've got Iowa State fans upset. There's a UCF fan that says this is the single worst ranking list I've ever seen in my entire life. The people associated with this creation should be incarcerated. All right. You know, we're two comments in and we've got people talking about someone needs to go to jail for this. There's a lot of strong feelings based on this. And you know what? The point I'll make about this to the Utah fans of the world that are not happy about coming into the league, that's what makes the league great. Like, people take great pride in the pregame atmospheres here, or just the atmosphere at their stadium in general. People care. You would not see Cal fans duking it out with Stanford fans about this list and where they're at on this list. You just would not have that in the Pac-12. That would not be a thing. But you have it in the Big 12. You have ridiculous debates like this that make Chuck shake his head because we all care way too much about it. And when I say way too much, that's not a criticism. In the grand scheme of things in life, we care way too much about it. But for college sports fans, we care like college sports fans care. You're gonna find a lot of great, passionate fan bases here that give you great game day atmospheres. Everybody coming in from Utah, so just pay attention. Pay attention to this. One last note here. This is definitely buzzer beater time if you want to get something in before I am out tonight. Now is the time. Click the $ below the chat box to do that if you want to submit a super chat. If you're watching after the fact, John-Kurtz-4 on Venmo to get your question or comment in there. If you are watching on Twitter, if you want to be a part of the chat and get your voice in tonight, just watch on YouTube, John Kurtz on YouTube, JOHNKURTZ to do that. And make sure you're subscribed to the Open for Business newsletter as well, ofbnews.com, in order to do that. UCF flipped a recruit from Mizzou this week, and I was happy to see that because, look, in addition to the point that I was making earlier in the show, to just kind of supplement that, man, if you are the Big 12, you need to not only win games against the big boys, but it would also very much behoove you to start actually recruiting against the big boys and winning a lot of those battles. Now, not that Mizzou is really a big boy per se, but they did win 10 plus games last year. They won, double digit games, and they won 11 with the Cotton Bowl win. Mizzou won double digit games last year, and they're a team in the SEC. So flipping and do, and they've been recruiting very, very well, by the way. Mizzou has been recruiting at like a borderline top 10 level with Eli Drinkwitz lately, which how and why that's a thing, I will never know, but it is a thing. He seems to be doing a pretty good job there. And so to do that is impressive. UCF just flipped a Bama commit not that long ago too. So they are doing a nice job. Gus Malzahn, he's one of the few guys recruiting at a top 25 level in the Big 12 right now. That's how you can start to change perception problems. And it would also be a good time for me to point out, I am very high on the long-term future of UCF because of things like this. They are recruiting better than most in the Big 12. Now, what they need to do is continue to stockpile depth, and I think Gus has even been pretty open about the fact that, like last year, the problem was that they just didn't quite have enough Big 12 caliber depth. They didn't quite have enough Big 12 caliber depth, and that's something that will take time to develop. but they're doing all the right things. They're bringing in enough talent on paper to be doing that. So I would definitely watch out for where UCF is going. By the time this is all said and done in the Big 12, they could definitely be a force, especially if they can keep Gus around, because I think very, very highly of him. One last thing I will address here, because I see it from Ron before I get out of here. Ron asked about Louisville to the Big 12. I would highly encourage you guys to go check out Greg Flugar's channel, Peek Around the Corner. If you want more information on that, it is his info. So I'm not going to take that from him. But if you want to learn more about that, go listen to Greg's channel. He's got the scoop on that. I will just say it makes perfect sense if Louisville is one of the teams that's the most engaged from the ACC right now, and perhaps if Louisville is the most engaged team from the ACC right now, as far as the Big 12 is concerned, because they've already flirted heavily with the Big 12. They came very close to being a Big 12 member back when the league added West Virginia and TCU. That was very much on the table. And I think, didn't somebody at one point, like there had been a picture tweeted of like some Big 12 signage that Louisville had made up. I mean, I think that got pretty far down the road before falling through. So Louisville has been there. There are already lines of communication established there. It would make complete and total sense. Plus, they're a school that knows they're not getting the invite to the SEC or the Big Ten right now. So they just kind of want to get off the sinking ship. They're probably smart enough to look around and say, man, this feels like a sinking ship right now. So for all those reasons, that does not shock me. And I'm glad that Greg was able to get that. So Peek Around the Corner. You guys know I have a ton of respect for Greg, and you can definitely go find more info on that on his channel. Okay. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you to the Twitter audience for being here. That certainly changes the view numbers on this video, which is pretty great. Oh, you can see how many are from Twitter. If I go scroll over the thing, look, we're learning new things here. You guys remember the days when I was too afraid to like try anything and do anything different? All right. Look at this. You can teach an old dog new tricks. You can teach this almost 35-year-old man some new tricks here. And it was cool to bring everybody in from Twitter. So I guess that is worth, though. Is it like $8 a month that I'm paying right now? Whatever I am paying to do that. I suppose it is worth that. Jeremy, I know you remember. I know Jeremy remembers. Okay. The schedule, I'm probably not going to be able to do a live show next Wednesday, just FYI, as I telegraphed to you guys that I'm probably going to be going to that concert on Tuesday now that mine got axed this weekend. So I'll keep you up to date. I'm trying to use the channel page more, like the community notes that you can leave in the channel page. So just make sure you're following the channel. Follow me on Twitter at JL Kurtz. And definitely, if you are a fan of the channel, it would mean the world to me if you signed up for the Big 12 newsletter, open for business, ofbnews.com. We've got 1,700 plus Big 12 fans signed up already in just over a month. So I must be doing something right? Make sure you go get subscribed to it now. I appreciate all of you guys. Enjoy the rest of this is Thursday, right? Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday night. Have a great weekend, and I will talk to you all soon.